3, 2, 1. Go, go, go. 70 over crest. Into 5 right long, tightens 3. Into 2 left long.
Some call it genius, but most just think it's a failed science experiment. For the last several weeks, I've been living with what might be the most controversial piece of sim racing hardware ever made, the AB9. A force feedback shifter that was never supposed to be a shifter. So here's the problem. It wasn't built for racing, and it wasn't marketed for sim racing. Moza basically slid a stealth mod onto their website that allows you to turn a flight stick into a gearbox, pushed a couple firmware tweaks, and went right back to selling wheelbases. And did anybody even notice? Oh yeah, we noticed. The hype for the AB9 came and went so fast that if you blinked, you missed the entire rise and fall. Now months later, it's finally time to figure out why this thing vanished from the spotlight, and if it really deserved to. Direct drive wheelbases changed the game for sim racers. Then active pedals showed up and changed the game again. And let's be real, it takes zero effort whatsoever to make a handbrake fun. That means the most boring piece of hardware on your sim rig is indisputably your shifter. Even the best ones lack the ability to deliver a real gearbox feel. There's no change in weight or resistance, no grinding, no drama at all. So here we are, reaching for a flight stick to fix what nothing else has. At its core, the AB9 is a pretty simple device. It has 2 motors, and that's basically it. No gates, no hard stops, no boundaries. Basically, if it's not in shifter mode, the thing's walking around the housing like it's looking for snacks. That leaves the base relying solely on 2 motors and position tracking to simulate an entire gearbox. And as crazy as that sounds, it actually does work, but maybe not at the same level of consistency and satisfaction that one might hope for. While the AB9 might be a sign of what's to come for sim racing, I don't think that very many of you are going to be jumping on that train this early. So for this video, I'm going to skip all the technical spec noise. I'd rather focus on the actual experience and what updates this thing needs so that it's truly race ready. First off, there are genuinely some pretty good qualities packed into this oversized science experiment. In a 1/5 pattern with reverse, it actually feels pretty solid. The return to center, way better than the older firmware versions I've seen. And the simulated gate positions feel decent, but not nearly as solid as a dedicated shifter. It's not perfect. There's still a bit of play in the mechanism, and yeah, every so often I miss a shift. But honestly, it's the most consistent conditions I've felt for the AB9. Under these exact circumstances, it's probably the most fun I've had using a shifter. But sim racing is not about living in the same perfect scenario forever. Some of us jump between different cars, different titles, maybe even cars with 6 or 7 gears. And that's where the problem starts. While in my opinion, the AB9 does feel better than any other shifter I've used in a 1/5 pattern, as soon as you start adding 6 and 7 gears to it, things get a little bit more messy. Once you add more simulated gates, it just starts to get a lot more sloshy. You find yourself hunting for gears a lot more, and even when you're in gear, the gates feel a little less firm than they did in the 6-gear pattern. Overall, the experience is just a lot different with more gears added to it. It's not entirely unusable, but it definitely requires slower shifts and a lot more concentration than it should. Now the AB9 also has a sequential option, and before I do reviews, I always like to see how other people feel about certain products because I want to experience it for myself and I kind of want to look for the different quirks that the product has. In this case with the AB9, people really didn't have good feedback on the sequential shifter. Now, there may have been firmware updates since others have tested it. I personally actually have grown to like it, but my emotions were all over the place initially because there's some challenges that come along with it. The main one being when I first started using it, shifting up or down, I found myself like I was used to being able to just do a quick pull and not being fully committed to it. And I would find that it would kind of buck and do a double shift up or down, leaving me a gear above or below where I intended on being, which was super frustrating. But in time, using the shifter, I found that full commitment of jamming it into gears, first off, it can take the abuse. Second of all, that's how you actually use it. If you halfway commit, you're going to find yourself jumping gears. If you go full on just jamming through the gears the way you feel like you want to treat your sim equipment anyways, it does work really well. I actually kind of prefer that to just a boring click because there is some feedback to it. There's some force behind it. And overall, it just hits a little bit differently. So that's something that I think I differ from a lot of people on. Is I appreciate the forces behind it, and now having gotten used to it, I think I kind of enjoy it a bit more. Now, as I think I've made pretty apparent, this thing is definitely flawed. It's not perfect and race ready right now. A couple big things that are just completely missing from it. First off, it has no gear lockout. So say you're running a 6-gear pattern and you go to hit 6th gear, because the gates are super tight, it's not hard at all to overrun 6th and go right into reverse. At that point, when you hit the reverse gear, obviously a lot of things happen and it can very much throw off your race or your rally or whatever you're doing. So a little bit of gear lockout or something to help force the car into reverse rather than having it just pop right into reverse would be useful. I don't necessarily know what the solution is to that, because on most you have to like push down or do something to get it to engage the reverse gear. In this case, there's just nothing preventing you from going from 5th gear or anything like that over to reverse. So that's a bit of a problem that happens pretty frequently. And then another thing that I would really like to see from it, and I think this is something that could be incorporated either from Moza or maybe it needs support from the titles themselves, but there's no gear grind effect. When you miss the gear or when you don't fully engage the clutch, I would just like to see more feedback from that. So you get that effect of like, it won't go into gear, it grinds. Like I want those kicks and bucks. And I think the base itself is fully capable of it. It's just a matter of how to implement it into either the software on Moza's side or the game side. Well, I can genuinely appreciate what Moza was doing when they decided to add shifting functions to the AB9. I can't help but think how much better it could be if they would just commit to making an actual active shifter. Like, I would love to have gates that prevent you from making mistakes like misshifts. Like, it's not, obviously it's not gonna be perfect if you don't know how to shift, but if you actually had solid gates where you wouldn't make mistakes, just following the track, like a normal car, it would probably deter a lot of that issue. They could alternatively come up with something in the software that tells it, hey, this guy's in 4th gear, high RPMs, probably not looking to go into reverse at that speed. But there's nothing there to prevent that, and it just seems to be one of those things where we're just left to take our chances and go from 4th gear to reverse or from 5th gear to reverse at really high speeds, and then that of course causes a big lockout. So I think ultimately just the 6 and 7 gear window with a wider, either wider channels, I don't know, like I don't know that the channels could get any wider on this thing. Maybe the motors are pretty strong. It doesn't necessarily need to be that strong. Maybe if they were to make a shifter, they could make it a little shorter and add a little width to it to give us a little more travel in the shifts. I don't know which combination would be best, but I do know that right now in a tight pattern with a full 7 or 8 gears, it's just, that's where the miss is right here. The AB9 already offers more realistic feedback than other shifters I've tested, but since it's an active motor-driven box, I just feel like it could deliver a little more detail. The effects when pushing and pulling through gears could feel a little more naturalized, and I'd definitely love to feel a little better synchro ring engagement. With the current adaptation, it can occasionally feel like it's overcompensating with hard vibration rather than refined, detailed feedback. As of right now, all of the testing I've done for the AB9 has been in sim racing. While I do have a slight interest in flight sim, it's not something I've really explored, and at the end of the day, sim racing is really what I'm passionate about. As far as competitive racing goes, pretty much all the cars that I race utilize a sequential gearbox, so I rarely if ever find myself needing an H-pattern shifter, but I do occasionally enjoy rallying, drifting, and every so often a cruise through some traffic, which are all more fun with a standard gearbox. So the question for me becomes, is it worth it to limit myself to the functional 1 through 5 gears in sequential, just so that I can have a more immersive racing experience? And then over time, I could get used to gears 6 and 7 to be able to use them if I absolutely need to? For me, the answer to that question might actually be yes, because it is a more immersive experience, which is what I really want when I'm using the sim outside of competitive racing. But for those who rely on a 6 or 7 gear H-pattern shifter for competition, or in general for that matter, it's not an ideal choice right now. There's too much room for error, and even with practice, it still feels a little bit off. Realistically, the ideal candidate for the AB9 is somebody who's going to utilize it as a flight stick because the general consensus for that is pretty good and people tend to like it for a flight stick, but can also utilize it within the confines of what it's good at in the 1 through 5 shifter range and sequential use once you get used to it. I personally am a big fan of what Moza tried to accomplish with this, and I would love to see them keep working on it and refining it to get it to where it needs to be. And honestly, it's something that I think I'm going to use for a little bit just out of the pure joy it brings me to feel some of the forces that I don't get from a traditional shifter. But I do want to reiterate, there's a lot of you that aren't going to feel the same way that I do about it, and in its current state, without it being updated more and some of these issues being fixed, it's not right for everybody. Now, I want to take a minute to thank Apex Sim Racing for sending me all this gear to play with and test. I've been having a lot of fun with the R25 Ultra and the Simnet Handbrake. Obviously, the AB9, which has been interesting. And I still need to get the M-Boost pedal mounted to the rig and start testing that. So, still a few reviews to come from some of the stuff they sent over. If you guys are looking for anything sim racing related, make sure you check out the link in the description for Apex. They've got a lot of different brands available, a lot of different sim racing gear, even some gaming gear. And if you're shopping anything Apex branded, make sure you use promo code ThirdWheel5 to get an additional 5% off. Now, as I mentioned, there's still a few reviews left before I can get back to Cup Car 2.0, but it's getting closer. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so that when I get started again, you guys are around to see it. And until next time, I'll see you guys out on the track.